Welcome everyone to the latest series of Hotel Tech Unwrapped, brought to you by IMS Connect. In this series, we are talking to some of the brightest technology businesses in hospitality who will share their insight on how you can master the hotel technology ecosystem. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by the CEO of Snapfix, Brett Robbins. Welcome to the show today, Brett. So tell us a little bit about Snapfix and the problems that you solve in the hospitality industry.
Happy to be here, Dennis. So to kick things off, I think I would say that Snapfix has always been built for corridors and basements and not the boardroom. And we're really proud of that. That doesn't mean that the leadership team and executive team members aren't getting value from Snapfix. And I actually think it's quite the opposite. When you can change frontline behavior, change how teams actually work every single day, that's how we drive results for the organization. So data, analytics, these are things that come out of our platform and inform the strategy in the boardroom. But at the end of the day, what we're actually doing is delivering an operations platform for frontline team members. We're changing how those teams communicate every day, the things that they actually go and do, how they prioritize work, how they deliver the service to the guest at the end of the day. So that's really where Snapfix has uniquely positioned itself. And so what does that actually mean in process? It means that front desk teams, building engineers, building operators, housekeepers, these teams are working in the first operations platform that is built for them. They're able to communicate successfully, problem solve, and at the end of the day, drive significantly more value for the guest in much more efficient ways than they would otherwise.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, so it's really cool platform. Obviously, a software business. Tell us a bit about the numbers. Are you globally present at the moment? How many countries are you in? How many clients do you serve?
Yeah, I mean, Snapfix is a global business, so we are headquartered in Ireland. I think as the listeners can probably tell, I'm not Irish. After a couple of Guinnesses at the pub, I will sometimes try to put on my Irish accent. The team always thinks it's quite silly, but hospitality is a global business, and I think that Snapfix is no different. So today we operate in 60 countries. Every single day, about 30,000 hospitality professionals are logging into our system to get their work orders and their guidance for the day to figure out how they can deliver an experience that is going to be unique and exceptional for their guest. And we've been operating since 2019. So we've been at this for quite some time, understanding how to change those experiences, really going deep with our customers, walking through the hallways with them, watching cleanings actually happen, going down into the basement, and seeing what happens when we need to service AC units and internet equipment and things like that, and trying to figure out how to translate that into really effective operation software.
Oh yeah, that's really, really cool. And just so if a hotelier can understand, what is a typical, say, user experience then for if I'm a housekeeping professional or a maintenance professional in a hotel environment? How do I interact with your software? How does that help me be more productive and deliver a better guest experience?
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll say first, is any day in hospitality like the usual experience? And
Absolutely not.
and I think this is what so many people forget about what it means to work in a hotel. So first of all, you can't take software that works in manufacturing, right? Where the environment is 95% controlled, right? And where process can really be driven and executed perfectly almost every day, and where process breakdowns tend to become quite rare. In a hotel, the rare process breakdown is the norm, right? Every single day, you have hundreds or thousands of guests that are coming through your building. They're all very unique individuals. They all have really unique sets of preferences. They request really different things from you on a day-to-day basis. And what you need is a system that can internalize that, interpret all that information, and then provide the right guidance and the right tasks back to the team. So let's take a housekeeper as an example. Housekeeping is one of the most challenging jobs inside of a hotel. It is thankless. It is repetitive in many ways, and it is absolutely critical. So it doesn't matter what the lobby looks like, what your hotel looks like on Instagram, how inexpensive or expensive your property is. If you walk into your room and the room is not perfect, then, this is going to be a really terrible guest experience. And so it's a really, really difficult job. And so for us, we want to make the life of the housekeeper much easier. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, you've got the housekeeping admin that comes in every single morning, very, very early, and they're met with, I've got 200 stayovers and 50 turnovers that are going to happen today. I've got to organize my team. I need to make sure I've got the right people on staff today to handle that volume. I've got to make sure I've got the right inventory coming back online for any of my check-ins that are going to happen. And I've got to do this incredibly fast because people are going to start arriving from overnight flights and things like that, in 30, 40 minutes. How do I get these rooms back online and ready as quickly as possible? So our software allows that person to click one button. And with the use of AI, we're evaluating what is the most optimal schedule for this building. How do we minimize the walk time for housekeepers between rooms? How do we take into consideration all of the factors about a room that's going to extend that clean time? Like there's 4 guests in this room that are checking out versus 2. This was a family that was staying for 5 nights versus a business traveler that's been here for 1 night. The level of clean required in these rooms is quite different. And when you build the right intelligence around that, you can actually make really successful schedules. So we're taking a process that would typically have taken a housekeeping admin 3 hours for a hotel of the size that we're talking about in the morning, down to 3 minutes. She then has all of the control in her hands. She's looking at the schedule, saying, oh no, I know that housekeeper doesn't like to work on floor 3, or they are not going to want to clean only turnovers. They're going to want to clean some stayovers too. And instantly she can drag and drop, modify the schedule, make the improvements that only a human can actually do at that point. But she's doing this in a matter of minutes. So we've now saved this person hours in the morning. She has time to actually think and to support her team and to then figure out very quickly, I'm going to need to call in some extra support that comes in towards the end of the day. So it's just a fundamentally different process. We've taken a lot of that grunt work that's hard about these jobs and, is frankly frustrating, and turned it into something that we're handing them the blueprint and allowing them to work through that strategy. So that's our admin.
Yeah.
I'll move to our housekeeper real quick,
Mhm.
and then curious what you think about it.
Yeah.
Then you look at our housekeeper. The housekeeper, again, as we've talked about, there's someone who they've come in every day. They are working as quickly as they possibly can to bring these rooms online. And, rarely does someone come through and say, oh, wonderful job. What a beautifully laid out room. It's quite the opposite. Okay, well, you didn't fold the toilet paper properly, or the guests said that they thought those towels weren't laid out the right way, or they didn't have enough towels in their room, and so it's always this negative feedback loop. So what we want to do for the housekeeper is make all the other things about their day as easy as possible. How do I make it simple for you to understand where you go, what you need to do in those rooms? What do I need to get off of my cart to bring into the room so that I can clean these things as efficiently and effectively as possible, and spend more time thinking about the quality of what I'm doing and less time trying to figure out and respond to what's happening in the rest of the hotel. So the housekeeper is not on the phone with front desk. They're not being told halfway through the day that their schedule is changing and they need to go somewhere else. They're working off of a single device, a single list of items, and that list of items is updated all day, every day, depending on the demands of the hotel. Someone shows up early, we can instantly update schedules. It'll show up in that housekeeper's queue so they know exactly what is expected of them. And that drives really, really high levels of accountability.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I'll never forget, actually, about 10 years ago, I was sitting with a hotelier. So he was an operations director for a group who were growing really, really quickly, right? And his view was that I can tell everything about an individual, whether you're a supplier or a staff member, in terms of how you treat the housekeeping staff, right? He said they're the most important people in our business. They're the frontline staff. They're the ones that actually create and put the final touches on the guest experience. And even if we reached out to them with like a Christmas gift or something like this, he would always say, no, put it in a way that we can use it to pass on a gift to our housekeeping staff, you know. So he was like, they were front and center, and I can really see how technology then like this would just really appeal to a person with that mindset. But it does sound like you can generate huge efficiencies in a business, especially in larger hotels where the scale and the amount of moving parts is obviously, there's a lot going on in a live hotel environment. So that's really cool. And one of the pieces, like when we talk to hoteliers ourselves, there's kind of two aspects to technology, isn't there? There's, you know, they can buy a solution and the solution works, so the technology works, but then they always say, well, how do we then change the behavior of our people, that we get the most out of the technology? And what's been your experience in that area? It sounds like your platform is really intuitive and naturally helps an individual to have a more stress-free day and be more productive. But how have you found that adoption once you've sold a solution into a hotel group, for example?
Yeah. It's just interesting to sort of hear you talk about what actually is going on and, on the front line and how people actually treat people. And I think that when it comes to software, sometimes people forget that, the software can do all the right things, but if it's not something that the team wants to use or is capable of using, it's never going to be successful at doing those things. And so I think in hospitality in particular, you really have to think about that UX, right? And how that person is actually going to experience it, right? You can't hand them something complicated. It's not because they're not intelligent. They're incredibly intelligent. It's because there's no time in the day to click lots of buttons or work through lots of problems in the software. That's just not how their world works, right? They are constantly trying to move as fast as possible. I was talking to a customer recently. Very interesting stat came out of it. And so that very data-driven customer, he said to me, just so you know, we've figured out that every minute of time that we save between rooms or between tasks for our team is worth 150,000 euro to our organization every single year, every minute. So we're not sitting here talking about how do I go from a process that took 3 hours to a process that takes 1 hour. He's saying, I'm talking about things about how do I go from something that would take 32 minutes to 31 minutes to 30 minutes. There's really these micro-optimisations because it's incredibly valuable for them. But getting to that level of micro-optimization means putting something in the hands of people that they're actually going to use. So, Snapfix is a tool that teams adopt in minutes. I was at a hotel training this week while I'm here in Ireland, and we hadn't trained them on it yet. We had given them their logins, and we come into the front desk, and I said, have you guys logged in yet? They said, oh yeah, we logged in yesterday. Oh, great. What do you think of the software? Yeah, it was easy. We were chatting back and forth. We did some tasks in it. As you kind of like get it? Yeah, we fully get it. We use the QR code. We explain to them how someone can use their device. They don't even need to be logged in to report an issue. They said it's really intuitive. It feels like WhatsApp and Instagram. And I chuckle at that because it's like, couldn't think of a better compliment than someone telling you that you're like WhatsApp and Instagram that have, billions and billions and billions of users, very different than our 30,000, but not that we're not proud of it, but a little bit of a different scale there. So, building something that feels friendly, intuitive, easily adoptable, it's really hard to do that. But when you get it right, teams can pick it up and use it immediately. And that's how we actually change behavior.
Oh, wow. Yeah, really cool. And we've been talking for maybe, say, 12 months and looking at, we were very interested in Snapfix in terms of how it could help our business deliver a notification to, say, a maintenance person that there's an access point offline. Let's fix that before the guest complains, etc. Right? And I think that the term I've heard you use the most is connected ecosystem. So what do you mean when you say the connected ecosystem?
Yeah, And I guess I haven't said it yet today, although it is
Okay.
one of my favorite buzzwords to say. So, you know, uh, hospitality is funny in this sense. I want to be careful because I don't want to insult any hoteliers today. But when you ask the average hotelier, how many pieces of technology do you use to operate your business every day? It's like even the smaller hotels that have 50 to 75 rooms are using 20 plus pieces of technology. And you think about that and you just go, well, that's insane. Like, how many do I use? I mean, I don't know. I guess I have a lot access to a lot of systems, but I'm on Slack, I'm on email, maybe I'm on Zoom. I'm certainly not using 20 independent systems a day to do my work. And it just speaks to this unbelievable fragmentation that has happened in the hotel technology stack over time. And I think where we're at this point in development is we've got to figure out how to bring that stack together. And so that's what I mean when I talk about the connected ecosystem. It's not that there shouldn't be specialized technology. You're going to have different tools to meet the needs of all the different parts of your organization because they're really complex organizations. But that doesn't mean that the front desk needs to log into 4 or 5 different tools every single morning and literally switch between apps in order to do their job. It should be the opposite. And so, if we look back, I don't know, a decade, right? The PMS came on to the modern PMS emerged, thinking about platforms like, Cloudbeds and Muse and things like that. And there was this promise that the modern PMS is going to be able to vertically integrate, going to be able to be a one-stop shop for everything that the hotel needs. And I think that PMSs have succeeded in a lot of that, right? They're able to successfully drive complex revenue management for properties that only have 1 or 2 staff members in back office and in revenue. They're able to get rooms online significantly more effectively. They're able to connect into the unbelievable number of channels where consumers are looking and thinking about buying. So there's a lot of phenomenal things that they've done, but they've primarily focused on rooms and on revenue. And then you look at the physical operation, and in many ways, I think it's been neglected. And so that's really where we see that opportunity. So how do you bring together tools like IMS, right? How do we get the signal that a TV has come offline, that a room's humidity level has gone too high, that an HVAC system is not producing the level of cool that it needs to, and you can take all these signals in, and you can proactively create tasks for the team. Hey, we think there's a problem here. If that task resolves itself automatically, great. Let's cancel out the task automatically as well. But when it doesn't, let's get ahead of it before the guest comes downstairs, because they don't always tell you in the minute, my room's a little bit hot. It's 7:30 p.m., 8:30 p.m. I've come in, I'm going to sleep. My room's a little bit hot. Am I going to say anything? Probably not if I'm fine and I can sleep. Maybe I come down the next morning, maybe I don't. But you could have 2 or 3 or 4 guests go through an experience, a negative experience in your property, have no idea that there's a problem until someone has a truly negative experience. Or you can be in a situation where all of these different systems, your internet and connectivity, your TV system, your HVAC system, are all connected and speaking to each other. And you have the ability to engage your frontline and say, hey, we've got something we need to go explore here. We've got a priority issue that we need to investigate. And that's how I think we really change the guest experience, is bringing together all those tools that have all this information, but then delivering it in a way where teams can actually engage, decipher, and work on the right issues at the right time.
Yeah, very interesting. There's definitely an abundance of opportunity in how hotels operate. The tech ecosystem is so complex. I mean, overly complex. And then, as you say, connecting everything together, there's a huge opportunity in there. Obviously, that's why we started talking to you guys for precisely some of the examples you mentioned. And in terms of, we'll say, where we are at the moment, but more looking forward, what do you see when you look ahead, right? What are the opportunities in technology for hoteliers? What are the opportunities you guys are thinking about trying to take advantage of? So yeah, how do you see things playing out over the next kind of 5 to 10 years in hotel technology?
Yeah. I'm going to throw the question back at you too, Dennis, by the way, after I answer
Yeah,
it, because
no worries.
curious where you think it's going. Um, but, I think on one side of things, COVID really changed things for the average consumer. The home environment was significantly elevated in terms of our connectivity at home, our ability to do what we normally would have to go into other environments to do. And so people upgraded their home entertainment, their home internet, their home, video surveillance, and so on. And it's a very different environment. I think that the average person interacts with technology in a little bit of a different way and has higher expectations now because consumer technology has moved so far. I would go so far as to say is I don't think that most hotels have moved as quickly. And it's really hard for large organizations to adopt things. And I think within the market, we've got some specialized players that have, leaned into some of these unique experiences and sort of changed what that experience is like for their guest. But I think in most cases, like hotel technology, the physical technology that a guest experiences still feels like it's pretty far behind the times. I'll give you an example that I encountered recently, but I went into a hotel room and it had some smart screens in the room, right? So it had an iPad-like device in the room for me, and then they had the lights were all be adjusted, and the curtains could be closed automatically, and some of this. And I found myself like pushing these buttons and just feeling like this system is not intuitive. Like I'm not enjoying using this. I'm not feeling like I'm in the modern age and that this is making my life easier. I'm feeling like I'm looking at an application for the first time. I've got to figure out how this works. I like can't quite get my shears to just close and not the rest of my curtains. I'm choosing between like 5 default light settings when really I just want the lights on in the room so I can do a little bit of work. It's really frustrating. And so I kind of feel like with hotels, if they could just catch up in some ways, that would be a good first step versus thinking so far ahead. What is the experience going to look like? Let's get the robots on the floor, to clean, because that's like that we were capable of that today. I get it. There's operational advantages of some of these things, but I think the first step is like let's meet consumers where they are today. Let's bring modern technology into our buildings. Let's update them. Let's make them run more efficiently. Let's make them safer and faster. And if we do that, I think we're going to have done a lot in hospitality. Uh, I've got one other one for you, but I'm curious, Dennis, on your side, because I know you guys,
Yeah.
you power so many of these systems. Where do you see them going? I mean, has this changed how you guys operate and the type of connectivity that you're required to build?
I think you've touched on a lot of the key points. I think it's replicating the home experience in a hospitality environment. So making it super intuitive because it's usually short stay. Um, it replicates what they can do at home. It does that securely, which is super important in a large network like a hotel network. But ultimately, it has to be super easy to use and deliver everything that that guest has at home. So if they arrive into the hotel, they can connect to the Wi-Fi like super easy. They can put their latest Netflix show up on the screen really quickly. And where I see the future going is you mentioned this, it's meeting the guest or the consumer, right? Where they live naturally. Okay. So two massive things I see is everyone is on WhatsApp. I've tried many times to get off WhatsApp. It's just not possible. Right. And if you in a kind of a business development role, I find it easier to contact my customers in WhatsApp than email or any other channel, right? So you get responses quicker. They prefer to have a conversation in there. And then I think the second layer to that is voice communication. So the amount of communication that's happening through voice notes and short videos, I think there's a huge opportunity here in a hotel environment where you could have a voice assistant in the room, for example, right? So what are the two mediums by which the guest communicates naturally? It's in WhatsApp via text or voice note, or by talking to a voice assistant that might be in their home. But the key thing, it comes back to connecting all of this together. So if I put a message into WhatsApp to say my Wi-Fi isn't working in my room, that should prompt a knowledge base to respond 24/7. So it's
Yeah.
like, try this, try this, try this. Okay. If that didn't work, it opens a ticket with the provider. The provider can respond in their CRM, comes back to the guest in WhatsApp. The guest actually doesn't even know that a company like IMS Connect is involved. They just see it as the hotel brand is literally responding to me here 24/7, helping me with my problem and helping me solve my problem. And if you get that problem solved before the guest leaves, the review score is going to be like through the roof, because it's one thing everything running smoothly in a stay, but when something goes wrong and how you respond, there's a huge opportunity in that as well, right? So to me, I think that's where it's all going. It's always, where do they live right now? How do we connect that into our systems? And then how does everything kind of flow smoothly from there? So it's a lot of the stuff you've already touched on. And I just think that when a human goes to a hotel, it should be the same. They should operate exactly the same as they do at home,
Yeah.
and I think the more kind of seamless we can get that connection, the more it's going to be really good for everyone, for operations and for the guest.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that a lot of hoteliers think that the system that they've put together will enable them to do this. But what you've described, which is both, okay, 24/7, I've got a smart bot that can begin to engage automatically with this. I've given it the right information. Most of the time, you can solve something in pretty simple ways. I mean, we all joke, you call IT services and, my computer's not working. Okay, well, restart it. It is a terrible joke, but it's true that there are simple solutions to these problems most of the time. But you need the ability to attempt to solve it simply, but very credibly with the right information. And then when you can't, to instantly hand that off to a team member who can engage with the guest and then help them problem solve it further. And if it can't be, then we've then created the right ticket to go solve it when we can the next morning. We might need a specialist involved depending on what the issue is. But it's that whole connected experience of how do I help this guest talk to me the way that they want to? How do I give them the right information? How do I hopefully solve the issue? And then how do I create the right tickets for the team? And you can't do that if all of your different systems are, disconnected.
Yeah, I totally agree. So it's there is huge opportunity, definitely. And for us, that's the whole purpose of this podcast series, is to talk to tech providers like you guys and start to educate hoteliers in terms of how you can integrate with other systems and the synergy of that. So it's a 1+1=3 outcome, as opposed to a 1+1=, I've just spent a lot of money and I've got no movement in the guest or operations experience, So it's a very interesting area. I think one of the challenges, when we talk to hoteliers, there's a lot of noise. It's an abundance of choice in terms of there seems to be an app or a widget or a piece of hardware to solve every problem in hospitality, right? And I was at a conference last week. Part of it was an exhibitor center. There was over 100 exhibitors. You talk to every one of them. They all
100
solved.
doesn't even seem like a lot.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
this
you
was
go to
their.
some of these shows and you're looking around and
Yeah,
it's like thousands. And yeah, I
and
don't envy the hotelier.
Yeah, and I was trying to put myself in hotelier shoes. I'm walking around and it's like, okay, I've met 4 different companies that tell me they solve the exact same problem, but in a really unique way. It's like, how do you even make a decision around what to do? So a lot of the time you end up with this kind of paralysis where, because there's so much choice, nothing happens, And so I try to, in general in business, develop principles for decision making, right? And I just wonder what your thoughts are when it comes to principles for, say, technology investment. If you were a hotelier and you owned a chain of hotels, um, what kind of principles would you apply in deciding what technology to use in your business?
Yeah. First of all, I will say, as I said, I am glad it is not my job to choose for a 300 room hotel or a multi-property group that's got 25 300 room hotels. What is the technology that I need to put in place? It's really hard, and I think it is really crowded across every part of the ecosystem. Um, what I do think is interesting and unique about hotels, though, is you can pilot software and you should be able to see the results of that pretty quickly. Now, this isn't true for everything. But I think that the best software companies are the ones that are enabling you to pilot that very quickly. And that means choose a property where you've got a GM and an operations team that you feel confident in, right? They're a seasoned team, they're capable of doing things, you know they're going to give you the feedback, and say, we're considering this technology. We want you guys to implement, and within the next week or two, we want to get those results out. And if it's a good piece of technology today, I think you should be able to implement and see the results in a matter of weeks. Now, again, this isn't true for every part of software and certainly not true when we start thinking about hardware. But I think that's the opportunity that's available to hotels. You've got these portfolios, right? You don't have to commit to everything immediately. And if you're talking to a provider who says to you, no, we're not so sure about that pilot, it's going to take longer to prove the ROI, or we're not sure we're going to get the results. I mean, that's your answer right there. They're not confident that they're going to see the success of that implementation. So I would push them and say, all right, let's choose a property and pilot it. Great. Let's see what it actually happens on the front lines when teams actually use this software. And if you're a bigger organization, you can pilot for longer periods of time, right? You can say, all right, I'm going to put this in 2 locations for the whole year, all right? Let's see how that works. You recognize maybe it's not as easy for you as an organization to move quickly, to, roll things out, to deal with the cultural change on the front lines. So you choose a few properties and you expect that it's going to take a little bit longer, but you're still able to pilot these things and see the results. And if you can't see them, then you don't have the right software in place.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, I totally agree. First of all, in our instance, it's a little bit more difficult because it's hardware, it's software, it's service. But we do a very interesting pilot going on. It's actually 5 properties in different parts, Ireland, UK, different parts of Europe, and it has to deliver a certain guest review score, basically, all right, on average. And we're getting closer and closer all the time. But for us as a business, we're learning a lot along the way. And then once you establish what the recipe for success is, you can now speak to a new customer and say, listen, we've tried everything. These 5 things will deliver results, and here's the evidence. So if you can just translate it into a sort of a proper business outcome or a guest experience outcome, you either don't deliver that, or you just don't know the problem you're solving well enough.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting. Yeah, pilots are super valuable. And then we've covered a lot of ground today, but is there anything else on your mind at the moment where you think it's important to share, or even anything you want to double down on from today's conversation as key takeaways?
I want to go back a little bit. I mean, you asked me the question, where is technology going over the next 10 years? And, I think my first comment is we've got to meet consumers where they are. And I think that really is true. I go to all the conferences too, and I hear all the things that, really smart leaders and operators are talking about on their panels. And I certainly agree with the things that they put out there, but I think there's still some more basic steps that we can take that will have a pretty dramatic improvement. At the same time, I do think there's a really interesting moment happening with AI. I mean, we see it in all the technology that we use to do business every day. And I think there's really amazing opportunities to bring AI to the front lines. And this is something that we're really passionate about. And in particular, when we think about how to start applying AI, it's about elevating that frontline team member, turning them into a superhero, right? That's what we're trying to accomplish. And it's never, in our world at least, going to be a replacement for what they actually do. I'd like to think, that in my lifetime, I will see a world where we have, AI-driven robots that are actually capable of doing, all of the many things that humans can do. I just don't know. I mean, it would be incredible if that happens. I think it would be a really unique world. It'd be interesting to live in. It'll be very different for so many reasons, and we'll lose some things, but we'll gain some things. But I don't see that happening in hotels in the next several decades. And so when I think about the next 10 to 20 years, it's like there are so many places where I can change the way that an individual receives information, receives direction, is able to solve problems that makes them so much more efficient, so much more capable of delivering what the guest actually wants. And so that's where we really see cool opportunities for AI. So an example of that, and something that we've got coming out very shortly, is how do we make it as easy as taking a picture to report a task, report an issue inside of a hotel. So instead of trying to figure out who am I going to assign this to, where is this issue taking place, what is the severity level of this issue, how do I properly tag this issue so that the data is reported, so that, from a boardroom standpoint, we understand how often these things happen. From a risk mitigation standpoint, we've got the right details on the thing that happened. How do I make all of that just take the photo, and the AI is capable of doing everything else? So we've got a version of that that's coming out very, very soon that I'm really proud of. And I think it's just going to change the game on the front line. Like, if all someone has to do who's running around all day is snap, 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 they're going to do it more often. So more issues will get reported. Buildings will be safer and better managed just as a result of that visibility at the end of the day. And there's no walking away from that from an accountability standpoint, right? If we see all the problems, we can actually turn around and say, okay, we have X number of issues with plumbing, right? We didn't really understand this before, just based on how the data was being captured, how it was being reported. We actually need to make investments to change this, right? This isn't just more work for frontline teams. That's the wrong answer. It's, what do we need to do here so these things don't continue to happen? We might need more team members, or we might need to make capital improvements to our business. But that's the value that someone gets, an owner of these different buildings, and the lead operators and so on. So I think AI just has this really amazing potential when it comes to frontline operations to make people into superhumans, and I'm excited about that. We've got a bunch of things that we're working on, and I think there's real opportunity there that is in the near term.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, so it's a huge potential to bring order to the chaos, doesn't it? In a 24/7 dynamic environment where you've got shift changeovers, and you might have a massive conference running during the day, and then evening is very different. It's more of a restaurant, like F&B type experience, and yeah, it's
Yes.
fascinating. Look, I've really enjoyed today's conversation. I think we've covered some really interesting areas. I think there's huge value in it for hoteliers to listen to. So I really do appreciate your time. You have a very busy schedule, but thanks for jumping on. We're looking forward to working with you guys more and more moving forward. And it's a huge success story. It's brilliant to see an Irish founded business now operating in 60 countries with a really cool product, innovating at the cutting edge of hospitality tech and making huge strides in the market. So we do wish you continued success.
Thank you.
And thanks again for joining us today.
Appreciate it, Denis. I was happy to be here.
Thank you for listening to today's show. We will follow up in the show notes with some useful takeaways and links to some key resources. We will also share a link to our guest technology maturity assessment. This is designed to benchmark your guest technology experience and provide a roadmap for future investment. We look forward to bringing more hotel technology content to you soon.